Sweet. All right, so once we have our scans, we can basically overlay them, and we can do a couple of things to do this. Now, for the most part, I know for some of us this might be absolutely a review, but it's a good foundation. It's a good start. I gotta tell you, that's a lot better projector than the one before. Anyway, is there any? Yeah, that's probably the best lighting situation as well. So we'll keep it at that. But we got our scans. We've got our image, right? And even that that's not really the best image. We could probably get a better one from actual Google Earth and get a better idea of what's going on. However, this is our drawing, so we do definitely want to save this. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on my desktop. And it'll come up in imagery. Sweet. So there's the correct, and this is of course what Bohuslav was gonna give you guys, right? Basically showing that each group kind of gets their own pocket community, or there's a pocket community garden between them. And essentially a large part of this project, guys, is how you guys are gonna work together to solve this as a linear park together, right? I'm sort of giving some secrets away that probably Bohuslav doesn't want me to tell you. But you know, knowing Dwayne, I know that he loves to have the whole studio work together, right? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, especially when you start talking about what your design is going to be, right? Just remember Professor Barrett was, oh yeah, he did mention something about that. And I'm sure Dwayne will as well. However, for today's quick tutorial, you need to know how to overlay these and manipulate them in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and open up some Photoshop. I've still got 2020. It works great for me. If you got a better version, go for it. Honestly, they don't change very much. Did you guys see the newest Photoshop? Where it's got AI generative in it now? It's like all the rage, right? However, I would say a lot of the stuff, honestly, it's still pretty easy to do. You can use AI, but you still have to know what you're doing, right? Anyway, there's some of the rain sticks that I've been making. So let's go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and create new, resolution 300, and since I know it's going to be 11 by 17, I'm going to go with 17 by 11. It's okay. That way at least I know which one it is. For a lot of us, I think this defaults as like something else. Make sure that you click it to Essentials, because you're going to get a lot more tools that you can use, right? I'm going to go ahead and get my scan. I'm going to go ahead and put that in first. Not a big deal. So File. If I want to do it correctly, I would go File. You can also drag and drop, but you know, that way you know how to do it. And there should be something called Place Linked, right? You can place Embedded too. That's actually probably a safer route. That way you never lose it. So Place Embedded. And I'm basically just going to choose that file, that scan, or whatever I need. And it lines up perfectly. So definitely not a bad scan for the camera. The next thing that we'll actually need is the Google Earth image. So two ways I can do it. I can either go on the internet, look for that image. There's also Google Earth Pro, one of my favorites. Where am I? Oh yeah, I was doing some exploration in Antarctica recently. I don't know about you guys, but you know, some people actually like go outside for fun. I go on Google Earth and I'm like, man, look what's in China. Like, especially when you get a VR headset and you can like walk through. It's pretty. I don't know about you guys. It's pretty cool for somebody who's has a low budget like myself, right? You know, can't always leave the house even sometimes because I got kids. If I remember correctly, I believe the site, does anybody remember the location? Guadalupe and Cibolo, right? South Cibolo. I'm probably gonna butcher it, but Guadalupe and South Cibolo. Thank goodness for Google. Would you look at that? I was already there. Let that load a little bit. And it looks like it's just about our site. Usually it puts the names on here. That's really annoying. There it is. So there's that little back alleyway, right? I know this is probably all kind of new to y'all just because this is your newest project, but I basically just need a screenshot of this so that I can start to overlay it or maybe trace it a little bit differently. It depends, right? But at least as an introduction, let's get the gist of it. So on a MacBook, you can do Shift Command the number 4 and you can take a screenshot pretty easily. On Windows, they have different programs like Snippet. Snippet's a great little free app that you can use to screenshot, or you can hit print screen on a Windows and of course get the screenshot as well. So once we have both of those, I'm basically just going to add them both in. So I'm going to go to my Photoshop, again place embedded, and put that screenshot in. Hopefully that's the right one. Nope, it's not the right one. Where's the screenshot that I needed? Desktop. There it is. Nice. So it does look pretty blurry until I hit enter, and then you should be okay. Here's honestly the kind of tricky part. Now one of them is true, so you know, basically this one. And I just realized I forgot to upload this to Aces real quick so you guys could follow along. So let's go ahead and upload these files. And that way you guys can confirm that you have them as well. So let's go to Canvas. And I'm just going to put it in one of our assignments. So, barrette rotation, we'll go ahead and add it to this. Submit. Nice. And our little screenshot. Now please let me know if you guys can see those and download them. Should see it under your assignments under our Canvas. Wonderful. Right, so now you're welcome to of course follow along, even though sometimes I think it's easier to just kind of watch and then kind of do it myself. I don't know, it depends on honestly how hard the the tutorial is. In this case it's pretty easy. So if you've never worked in Photoshop before though, this might be, you know, a little scary. Programs are a little scary at first. There we go, we'll keep adjustments and we'll scoot that over a little bit if we can. There we go. Don't need all the tools. So one thing I would like to draw your attention to is specifically the layers panel, right? So this is where we can control just about everything, right? We can turn off the background, we can turn off each individual layer, and we can do a lot with it. So the way that Photoshop works is that, you know, if you click on that layer, it will apply anything that you're doing to that layer. If I have nothing clicked, Usually it actually gives you an error saying, hey, you didn't click on anything. How am I supposed to know what you want to do, right? As artificial intelligence is becoming such a popularity thing, it's still very not there, right? The computer doesn't think for itself and in fact has no idea what you're looking at. So we kind of have to tell it what to do still, which is okay because that keeps us in a job. So let's get our background and let's actually fit it to our 11:17. Since we know that this is to scale, we'll go ahead and match the imagery. So in my case, you'll see that the screenshot is on top. If I put it in the middle, it quickly goes away, right? Because on the layers, if it's on top, it'll actually show on top. If you put it at the bottom, it will show at the bottom. So if I change the fill or the opacity of, say, the top layer, I get that, right? I start to see a little bit of this. So I'm going to click on my screenshot. I'm going to rename it, double click, and type in Google Map. That way it's a little easier to look at. And I'm going to double click on this one and just call it the tracing. That way I don't get too confused. If I click on the Google Map and I choose Command T, as in Tyrannosaurus Rex, or Tango, military-wise, I can control the size of an object, right? So for here, I basically need to get this as close as possible. Right, so in my case, getting pretty close. If I hit enter, we can definitely tell. Can zoom in a little bit. Looks like I'm a little bit off. I can also lock something. So if I click on that tracing and I lock it, that's really nice because now I can move stuff without accidentally moving something else. Dang, did I get really close or what? Look at that. Spot on. I can also use my arrows, right, my little arrows. I'm just trying to get as close as possible. Right, I kind of want this hybrid situation, right? So for some of us, a lot of us are going to trace our drawing, right? Anyway, something we can simply do and even have Google Maps involved. This was really kind of the whole part of the tutorial. However, you'll notice I'm off in a little bit of few other areas, right? Say right there. So it looks like we still need to hit Command T and shrink it down just a little bit. You'll notice if I hold shift, it stays proportional. If I don't hold shift, look what happens. It's imperative to hold shift, right? And to keep it proportional. See how close we can get, press enter. We'll zoom in. The way that I'm zooming in is Command minus or plus. If I hold the space bar, I can actually pan around and get, yeah, look at that, way closer. Bohuslav's pretty good at tracing. Look at that. Not bad. But it looks like we're fairly lined up, right? In terms of the streets, it looks like we could get a little bit better. Maybe it's a tiny bit smaller. Let's do it. I'm a perfectionist. I'll hold shift to make sure it's proportional and press enter. Another thing that we could do is, well, we could go, the lines are too light, right? Maybe I want to bulk up my lines a little bit. So I'm going to unlock my tracing and I'm going to do Command M as in mom. This controls our curves. For the most part, you can usually use automatic, right? And you can see that it starts to brighten, it starts to bulk up a bit of this drawing. Another thing that I can do is click on the black eyedropper tool and click on what is the most black, right? So it's going to really bulk those up. Did you guys see that? Ah, that actually looks a lot nicer, right? Even on the projector. Actually, it looks better on the projector than my screen. That's unusual. But again, it's really just about the tools of alignment, right? And then a little bit of tweaking to our drawing or the Google image to actually get a nice drawing, right? What's one of the first things you guys do when you get the site? You trace it, right? In some way. I would imagine that you guys are probably going to do a site analysis of some sort, right? So we're facing north right now. I know it's a little bit of an angle. He might have put the angle right here. Awesome. However, can we see that very well? No, we can't. So let's say I even wanted to change my drawing, right? So I can either get an elliptical tool since I know that it's circular. What I prefer is actually right-clicking on my lasso tool and using polygonal lasso tool. That way I can actually snip just about ever I want. I like those construction lines. If you know me and taken my graphics course, you know that it's a must. All right, so I want to take that bit. So I'm gonna Command X so that I can cut it, right? And it's gonna cut it out of this piece. Or I could copy it, you know, it's not a big deal. Or, you know, I could just brighten it here. Maybe it's in the right spot, or maybe I want it somewhere else. I could put it in the street too, not a big deal. Oh, maybe I do have to keep it locked. Will it let me? Let's go ahead and make a copy. Yeah, so we got a piece of it, right? Another thing that we can do, instead of, say, changing the opacity of something. So for instance, the opacity right now, we set it to 50%. That's why we can see through it, right? I would say this is a little bit more advanced, but if you right-click on your layer, you go to Blending Options. Instead of normal, you hit Multiply. And that's pretty much it. It'll actually take those and make everything transparent for you. You guys see that? Barely, right? Let's go ahead and pull our Google map back a little bit. So we'll go ahead and put that at 50%. Does that make sense, guys? Honestly, we get the same thing, right? But it is kind of nice that we can remove any detail that we don't want using the blending options as well. We can do the same thing with this little guy that we made, right? Say I was making a copy of it. Maybe I wanted to make it bigger or something, right? I could go Blending Options. And this is where it'll become apparent. You'll see that white just disappear, right? So if I hit multiply, awesome, right? I didn't have to go in there and erase the white out of it or anything like that. I can still do my curves, right? So I can choose the black eyedropper tool, can really darken that up, almost too much. So maybe take it back a step. I could use levels, so Command L as in, what's the military for L? Lima. Right, we can go ahead and brighten those, or we can darken them, right? Varyingly, right? Obviously, the blending options doesn't help so much in all the right places, but at least you know what to do now, right? But essentially what we're trying to go for is some sort of hybrid drawing based on our tracing and that digital image, right? Another thing we could do is, well, maybe I don't want color, or maybe I only want a certain color in my Google map. So I can go to Image, Adjustments, and Color Balance. Say that I just wanted to show the green trees. I could show a lot of the green and start to take away from some of the other colors, right? Or I can just control that image. So again, it could be something like the brightness and contrast. We could change the brightness. More contrast means it's gonna, you know, bulk up some things. That looks pretty nice. And voila. We now have this nice little hybrid drawing to use. However, let's say I wanted to get rid of some of my information. Maybe even my professor told me, get rid of some of that stuff that you see at the bottom. That's fine. Let's go to my tracing layer. I'm going to hit the letter E as an echo. And it's going to tell me, hey, I can't do anything. This must be a smart object first. And that's okay. I'm going to right click on tracing. And I'm going to convert to a smart object. Simple enough. Now I can hit the letter E. And it still says, hey, wait, it needs to be rasterized. All right. So I'm going to right click on my tracing. And there should be a rasterize option somewhere. Did I click on the wrong thing? Did it move? It's in gray. Why? But why? Could be our mode. Let's go to 16-bit mode, because that might be why. Convert to smart object. Of course, 16 bits better than 8-bit. And now we can rasterize our layer. Sweet. Let's try erase again. I can right click and even change some of those settings. So I could change the hardness of the eraser. I usually like to keep it at 100%. But again, since my blending options are on, right, it looks like just a nice erasing, for sure. Looks like there's some parts of the tracing we really don't need, like that black that came in. So we'll just erase it. Makes it look like magic. Really does. Another thing I could do is, of course, crop this image, but I've already set the image to be exactly 11 by 17, so I don't really want to change the scale or anything like that. There we go. Fair enough. I mean, we could take it a lot further. I mean, we could make this black and white. I don't know if you'll see it that well though. Yeah, kind of hard to see. It does make the tracing stand out a lot more, but we can go ahead and change. You know, another good one is the vibrance. I usually like 100% vibrance, especially in my digital image, and then I'll cut back the saturation just a little bit, maybe like -6 or 8. And usually that will brighten up a drawing as well. But yeah, hopefully something new, at least for the beginning of today. How we can overlay stuff, right? How we can start to manipulate some of the lines that we scan in, okay, for sure. And then basically just basic tools of Photoshop, right? So your transformation tools and everything else that I covered. Any particular questions though? Yeah.
How are you able to make the lines again darker?
Make the lines darker? So the question was, how do I get the lines darker? I would click on that tracing, right? I'd click on the lines that I do want to make dark. I'd go to image, image, adjustments, and typically brightness and contrast, levels, or curves, right? All three of those can potentially make the lines darker, right? So if I go to brightness and contrast of that specific layer, if I turn it down, oh yeah, it's gonna darken it big time, almost arguably too much, right? If I brighten it, of course it's gonna make it disappear. So I would say with a grain of salt is most of these commands. But a great question.
And what does Control M do again?
Curves.
Oh, curves? Okay.
Yeah. So I use a lot of the shortcuts. One thing that I really like to tell students that, how many of you guys play a musical instrument? Maybe some of us? Photoshop, all these programs are like an instrument, right? They have their keys to it. In fact, if you guys know about playing an instrument, the first thing you do when you start playing an instrument, you got to look at yourself, watching yourself play the instrument. But eventually you get so good that you don't have to look. You just know what you're doing, right? The same thing could be said about Photoshop. Eventually you start to realize your keyboard is your best friend, right? You can save, print, all sorts of things, right? A lot of the stuff in the background that when I pan and stuff, I'm actually hitting the space bar, right? And things like that. Or when I'm zooming out, right? I'm actually using the keyboard. Any other questions, guys? Great one. Is this familiar for most of us? Maybe a little bit new? Kind of advanced? I feel like we went over E1. Yeah, it kind of overlaid it. But I know not everybody took my E1. Photoshop working for the most part on these computers? You guys notice the difference? I've noticed it way faster. You guys remember waiting like 2 or 3 minutes for Photoshop to open? But like I said, I'm really only trying to take up half of the class. Unfortunately, we took a lot of time getting the scanner and realizing all the problems with the trajectory and whatnot. Yeah, you can keep thumb driving there. Yeah, so maybe the next thing to go over is how we can save something from Photoshop. Because it is kind of particular. So when I do want to save, I can go to File, Save As, right? Because if I just hit Save, it's gonna save it to whatever file that I made it. So if I do want to edit this again, right? I'd want to save a PSD file, right? So let's say I do want to edit again. I'm going to make myself a special folder. I'm going to call it, you know, ARC 2306 or whatever our class is. And I'm going to make sure that I save it. So site plan tracing. So what's nice about that is it's going to save all my layers. It's going to save everything. However, I can't print an PSD file, right? The printer is just going to blow up, right? It just won't even work. In fact, you can't even open up a PSD file without Photoshop. So if I want to print, however, it's a different saving. So I'll save that first, and it looks like it's finished. I'll go to File, Save As. And what's nice is the new Photoshop now has Photoshop PDF. Right, so I can even save it as a PDF to get it printed. Save. That's fine. I'm going to choose a high quality print. And yes. That way when I click on my files, oh my God, Photoshop, get the hell out of here. That way I can click on this PDF and go ahead and print it. Obviously it's not done saving, so nothing's gonna show up. There we go. It happens to be the world's largest PDF. Uh-oh, right? It's 435 megabytes, which is also gonna blow up a printer. Right? So what I would need to do when saving that PDF file, so again, File, Save As, Photoshop, PDF. I'm actually going to just replace it. But instead of a high quality print, I'm going to go with smallest file size. Save. And what's nice, it's the smallest file size with still, you know, the actual render. Not too bad. However, great questions. What else? Any other questions about Photoshop, guys? How do you erase? So the line? Yeah. So the question was, how do I erase again? Keep in mind that these already have to be lines, right? So I did do two different tracings. So for instance, like I did it with the blending options. Right now it's in multiply. However, if it's in normal, it's not going to work, right? In fact, look what happens. There's all those little erase things that I did, right? So you do have to make sure that your tracing is in those blending options, right? So I'm going to right click on that tracing again, blending options, and multiply. What's that going to do is remove the white space of that drawing, right? Which is really helpful for us because we always have a lot of white space. Once I do that though, I can hit the letter E. I can click on the layer, hit the letter E, and of course erase any line. Helpful? I'll go ahead and stop the recording here though. And again, I'll put these on YouTube under my page. If you guys are unfamiliar, I've got a lot of just SAC tutorials on there that you can definitely familiar yourself with.